Horror Fanatic here, and this month on One Man Book Club I'm going to talk about Doctor Sleep by Stephen King. The long-awaited sequel to my favorite Stephen King novel, The Shining. Well, maybe not my favorite, but my most loved, as I have a lot of memories tied to that novel. That said, because of the nostalgia value of it, I don't feel that this book is as good as The Shining. So, while in my opinion not as good as The Shining, it provides plenty of closure for the characters, and it's really nice after all of these years to learn what became of them. Taking place years after the events of The Shining, Danny Torrance is now in his late 20s, he's an alcoholic, and it starts with him hitting rock bottom as an alcoholic and then leaving town after he steals money from a girl, Deanie, after her son, Tommy, catches him. And he stops Tommy from, taking coke off the table that he thinks is candy, and puts Tommy to bed with her. Like, all things considered, it's not like the most terrible thing you could see an alcoholic do. I've seen alcoholics do far worse. But everyone has a different rock bottom, and this is Danny Torrance's, which sends him on a journey through towns over a number of years. He tries different stints with sobriety until eventually he lands in a small town. And he meets a caretaker of a part of town called Tiny Town, and there's like a train that runs through it that's like for the children. It's an attraction of sorts. And this man, Billy Freeman, introduces him to Casey Kingsley, who runs the town to get him hired on as like a spring groundskeeper, caretaker, to get things running until summer, when high school kids are hired on and do all of the attractions because they work for much cheaper and they're more what the town expects for the type of people to be working there. Casey Kingsley also is recovering alcoholic and an active member of AA, and sponsors Danny and helps him get clean. Well, sober. And work the program. The book then takes jumps over a number of years, interlacing Danny and what's happening with him. He eventually goes and works at a hospice facility, something that he's done a lot because of his Shining. It helps him, connect with dead people and help them pass on. And while he's doing that, Abra Stone is born, who's a girl who also has the Shining, and she's more powerful than Danny ever was, which draws the attention of a group known as the True Knot, led by Rose the Hat and Crow Daddy. And it's like modern day pirate vampires. They roam the highways looking for children with the Shining, and they kidnap, torture, and kill them to consume their psychic energies on death, like vampires. They turn a woman named Andy, who takes up the moniker Snakebite Andy. Everyone in the group has different nicknames. They're kind of pirate-esque. Like there's the Chink and Grandpa Fleck. It's really interesting, and I like these characters. They're all look older, and they travel in Winnebagos and RVs, and are overlooked for that. And they are very old, effectively immortal as long as they keep consuming steam, which is what they call the Shining that they consume off of children when they kill and eat them. They can also apparently consume it from natural disasters and such, or acts of terror, they feed on 9/11. Something else as the book advances through the years, it also moves through presidents, and it hits on different important points in American history since the release of The Shining, which makes the book feel far more contemporary, and like Danny Torrance is aged with us, and I really like that. Abra Stone was born with a cowl on her face, and she's just insanely powerful. She's able to astral project, she's able to look into people's minds, she's able to read thoughts like Danny. But ghosts are a much smaller part of the story as opposed to The Shining. The Shining was a singular location, and the atmosphere itself was what was trying to consume the characters. While that sense of foreboding has been replaced with the true knot who work as a good stand-in for this story, aren't the best substitute. And The Shining has been expanded to such a point where it's just all psychic things, and each person has different like knacks and abilities, it seems. Abra is initially, after like growing up with these abilities and get powerful and powerful, she eventually realizes that she needs to hide and starts pretending like they're going away from her parents, Lucy and David, and her grandma Momo, who are all aware of her ability. They even consulted Dr. John Dalton, who looks into it. Apparently in this universe, like, psychic phenomena are far more common, and like he's actually able to like look up stuff about it and not be like crazy pseudoscience, apparently. So The Shining is something more prevalent, just incredibly rare and unresearched, which felt less spectacular to me. You also get to learn the fates of Wendy, who dies of lung cancer, and of Halloran, who Danny loses touch with. And I'm not going to spoil what happens to him, but he's still represented in this novel, and it's still just a much smaller role as compared to the last one. But I do love how Danny sort of takes Halloran's place as like the protector. He goes to help Abra when he's called, and like the student very much becomes the teacher in this novel, and I really liked that. A lot of that's actually echoed. Danny becomes a violent alcoholic like his father. He smokes like his mother, but he works through it, kind of proving, well, yes, your parents' nature and nurture define you, but ultimately your own actions define yourself, and I really liked that as well. It's nice looking at the last novel, which was heavily about alcoholism, and this one, which is heavily about recovery, and it feels like those two books mesh well together, and it does feel, like I said earlier, closure to the themes of the last novel. Some of the ghosts from the Overlook show up. Again, small, and I kind of wish the Overlook played a bigger role. And it does feature itself in the novel a little bit, mostly towards the end and the beginning. But overall, the events of the Overlook feel like they're very underplayed. But then again, like 20-something years have passed since the Overlook. When the book ends, Danny's in his 30s, so he was for the Overlook. So it makes sense that with time, some of that would fade, but it still sticks with me, still has nightmares from it, but it's just feels like we're being reminded that, oh yeah, this stuff happened, and it doesn't feel as pertinent to this story, and I kind of wish it was. I like the aspect of like vengeance as well, and the idea that a cruel temper runs in the family. I like Abra Stone's character a lot in this regard. She's a 14-year-old, like a 12-year-old girl? Yeah, 12, I think, for the majority of this novel, right until like the afterword. And I really like her character as a character who's both young, but because of her burden has kind of aged sooner than she should have, and is easily capable of maliciousness, especially when she feels it's deserved, which it is for the murder of the baseball boy, a child that gets killed and eaten by the true knot. And there's a sense of poetic justice in the book about that as well that I really enjoyed. I kind of wish where The Shining had such a definite, like, dread location, a place that just oozed with atmosphere, and Dr. Sleep really lacks that. Like, the setting doesn't feel like it plays a crucial role, really. Like, you can substitute any towns that are near each other for this, like, but there's only one Overlook. And they go back to the ruined sites of it, but even then, like, it's not crucial. It doesn't feel like. It feels like it's placed there because we expected to go back to the Overlook rather than it feels somewhat forced for me. The supporting cast in this book is actually really great. Like, I can't point to a single character that feels unneeded or superfluous or is poorly done. They all feel like fleshed out, real characters. I really like Billy Freeman, a much older gentleman who I picture as the judge from The Stand. And he's like kind-hearted, and he has a touch of The Shining. Like, he's a match where Danny Torrance is a flashlight and Abra is a lighthouse. So he's got just a touch of what the others have, which still makes him crucial to the story. And I really do like his character. He's a kind character. I like Casey Kingsley a lot. He's hard on him. He helps Danny through Alcoholics Anonymous as being his sponsor, and he's what you would want for Danny Torrance to meet, and stays in the novel as a minor character. But he's a character that much sticks with the themes of the book of recovering alcoholism and like facing your past, where he misses his daughter who's never around because of like his actions as an alcoholic, and that made him very real to me and a very honest character. John Dalton is by far the biggest stretch, the Doctor, but even he was a character that I really liked, and he fit in the roles that he needed to be in the book pretty well. And at one or two times it did feel like he was a bit of a stretch, but nothing I would consider unbelievable or that wouldn't fit with the mood or the tempo of the book. And he was needed. Abra's parents are very minimal characters, and I wish they could have been fleshed out a little bit more, but there's only so many pages in a novel, and they weren't the focus. Abra was the focus. I liked Momo, Abra's grandmother Momo. Yeah, grandmother Momo is a real great character and plays crucially into the final parts of the book, and I really like how she was worked in at the end. I liked, even as far as villains go, the True Knot as a whole. Like, I liked them as villains. Like, they work really well for this, but it's not The Shining. They don't feel as supernatural, although they are psychic vampires and they're evil and they feed on children. It just felt like a very great departure from what I was expecting from this novel, but not in such a way that it was bad. It was just unexpected. So my final thoughts on this book is it's really good for having a satisfying conclusion to the themes and the characters of the first book. If you're a big fan of The Shining and you want to see what happens to those characters, then Dr. Sleep is a real good book, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't what I was expecting, but I really did enjoy it. There's very few bones I have to pick with it, and all of it, and every bone I have to pick has to deal with the heavy nostalgia and personal connection I have to The Shining, which is a hard thing for any author to handle. How do you write a sequel to possibly one of the best American novels ever written? Alright, and that's all for this month.